I am. You don't have to try to spell my last name on these things. Just put Sandy K anywhere it talks. Although I was impressed with the first group, some of them got the spelling correct. So, but I am the HIPAA officer. This is a direct line, the 262 number. It comes directly to my office, and it allows me to take confidential reports. Okay, I know I've talked to you about disciplinary actions in the past as well, but really disciplinary actions in the facility that are the least of your worries if you are violating HIPAA. If you're violating HIPAA, the civil penalties is really where you want to be afraid of. So as far as civil penalties, they are anywhere from $100 to $250,000 plus jail time. Now that doesn't mean because you left something on the copier that you're going to do jail time. That means that we're probably going to, do an education with you. But when you have repeated HIPAA offenses that I have to report, and I do have to report HIPAA offenses to the powers that be, then they can come back and issue penalties. And so this is where I really want you to know that HIPAA is no joke. They are very serious about that. All right, you can't download copy information. Once you leave a facility, you have to make sure you give everything back, this patient health information. These shred boxes are our friends. Please do not take anything home with paper with patient health information on it. Shred it at the end of the day. So the other thing is social media. So we tell you all the time, please don't post anything about Shook Home on social media. Meaning don't take a picture down the hall and expect not to get in trouble for it. You're not allowed to post things on your social media. With the exception of things that Shook Home has posted. So there's a lot of times we'll post something and if you share it, it's okay. But please don't use anything identifying. Don't write, oh look, that's my favorite resident so-and-so. That's a HIPAA violation. If we post something with a name, that means we've gotten specific permission to post with that name. But we don't want you posting that information. Surveyors are allowed to look at it, so if you have a Facebook page and you have no security measures on it, the surveyors can walk in, get on Facebook and type in your name and pull it up, and if they see any type of issues on it, they can cite Shook Home for it. So please keep that in mind as well. The security piece, like I said, this is more electronic forms. All right, so anyone that has computer access or access to the kiosks has a unique user ID and a password. Please do not give that information out to anyone. That is unique to you, and if other people have that, then it needs to be changed. At one point I went through here and took all these stupid slow things out of there, but I guess I didn't do a very good job at HIPAA. Okay, so password protection. So we do change our passwords every so often. We are prompted anytime we're in the computers and stuff. Now I don't think Point Click Care doesn't do that, does it? They don't.
It does.
It does.
But it's only for when we started going forward. A lot of people who originally set up don't have their passwords changed, although they probably should.
Okay. So normally with our computers, we have automatic password changes, but you should change passwords as well. If you ever think there was an issue, maybe you left something, I don't know, for example, not that Josh doesn't have all of our information, but say I give Josh my password because I have to go out somewhere and he's got to fix my computer. When I come back, I should change that password because he has it.
Well, for the record, I never need to know anyone's password.
Yeah.
So.
Josh is special and he can get into anything. So anytime you think there's a breach, if you think there's an issue, you need to notify me. Part of the law states that I do an investigation on that issue. And the investigation is to find out who had the breach, who was affected by it, how many people were affected by it, the severity of it, and then I have to decide based on that who I have to notify. Maybe the resident, maybe power of attorney, it may be Secretary of Health and Human Services, and it may be the media, depending on how many people are involved. Make sure, so we have a lot of CNAs in here, when you're on the kiosks, make sure you're logging out before you leave there. Even if it's an emergency, it takes one click just to log off so that you can, so no one's going in afterwards and seeing that. But we do have automatic things as well. After so long, they automatically lock for us. All right, so in the Shook home and in your life, do not open any emails that you have no clue what they are, especially if they have an attachment to it. If you are not expecting an email from the school and the school sends you something with an attachment, I'd verify that they sent it to you first. I do that all the time. I call people and say, hey, I got an email that had an attachment and it looked kind of funny. Did you actually send it? Sometimes they did, sometimes they didn't. If they didn't, I deleted it. I notified Josh so he could do with it what he needs to, but we need to make sure that we're not opening things like that. When we open things like that, it can be as simple, and I say simple, but it could wipe out my computer, but if it gets into the network, it can wipe out our network too. So we have to make sure that we're not opening suspicious emails. So in addition to that paperwork, the verbal stuff, all that, our hard drives have patient health information on it as well. So hard drives for your computer, hard drives for the copiers, they remember everything that ever went through them. So those actually have to be destroyed as well if we get rid of those products. All right, high tech is the third part of HIPAA, and high tech is, okay, so we have all these laws, but what happens if we do have a breach? And it was added onto HIPAA a little bit afterwards, but. So what does constitute a breach? When I say breach, it's basically someone obtaining information that shouldn't have, whether it's us telling them or giving them a piece of paper or accidentally faxing them that paperwork. Someone taking my computer and getting into it. Those are all types of HIPAA breaches. Okay, so if we do have a breach, then you are contacting who to tell them about the breach?
You.
Thank you. So you're contacting me. Why are you contacting me if there's a breach? What do I have to do?
Report.
I have to report, but how am I reporting based on what?
Shut it down.
What's that?
Shut it down.
No. What do we do in abuse and neglect situations? Investigate.
Oh.
So you're contacting me so I can do the investigation, so I know if there's breaches, and if there are breaches, then I'm contacting the appropriate people. And I already talked about who we're contacting and when. All right, we talked about disciplinary actions again. This is talking about the exact same thing. Questions? You told me to say something about HIPAA.
I was just going to say with our new email encryption, it automatically detects keywords, and will encrypt emails.
Right. We have a new program. Basically, our email is our email can be encrypted, which means like if I'm sending information on one of our residents to
To a lab.
To a lab. That's a good example. And I'm sending out an email. Any PHI in the subject line automatically, no?
It detects it in the body.
In the body, okay. Any PHI in the body of what you're typing will automatically send out an encrypted email, which means Joe Schmo can't get it out in the World Wide Web. There's also a way that you can manually send it out as well by typing something in it, and I don't remember what it's, some funky word. But that's a great thing for us to have now. All right, my last section's compliance. So compliance is another federal program. Basically the gist of it is it's there to make sure that we act in an ethical manner here at the facility. So we had a new compliance plan start March 28, 2019. That's when it was adopted by the board of directors. And some of the information that's in that is our mission statement, vision statement, and core values. So I want you to take a moment and read the mission statement here. Now I want you to listen to the mission statement. We are committed to providing quality health care and rehabilitation services to empower individuals to achieve their highest level of independence, dignity, and self-worth in a home-like environment. Okay? So that is our mission. That is what we believe here at Shook Home. So what I tell everyone is if you read this and you say, oh, phooey on it, then you should not be working in healthcare, number one, and you definitely should not be working at Shook Home. We need to have buy-in on our mission statement to make changes for the better of our residents. Our vision statement is more of things that we're looking at in the future, you know, what we want to aspire to do. And then lastly, our core values. Our core values list a nice little acronym. So there's I think one person in here maybe that was here when we had the Come Share Our Smile as our slogan. So we took that when we came up with the core values and used SMILE as our acronym. So our core values are support, motivation, integrity, love, and excellence. So again, these are all things that if you do not believe in, if you think that your job as a CNA is to come in, just do your work and go home and there's no compassion or empathy or anything like that, then again, you probably shouldn't be at Shook or healthcare in general. These are things that we truly believe in and we expect our staff to as well. So again, the compliance plan was adopted in March of last year, and it is for anyone who is working at the facility. So it is us as directors, it is you guys as employees, any agents, so our board members, contractors, volunteers should all follow the compliance plan. And then we have a number of things to talk about for the code of conduct. First is integrity. So integrity. Integrity is a way of putting yourself out there. If you do not have higher integrity, you may do things out in the public that you shouldn't be doing that can affect employment here in the facility. Discrimination we talked about already through policies and procedures, but that is part of the code of conduct as well. The fraud and abuse, again, I'm not going to go into detail because Barb is going to talk to you about fraud or abuse and neglect later on. But just in general, if you see abuse or neglect, you guys are all considered mandated reporters and by law have to report what you hear or see. It is not your job to decide if something's abuse or neglect. It's your job to report that. We've always said you basically report anything that kind of just gets you in the gut. So if you walk by something, you hear someone talking and you're like, oh, I wish they wouldn't talk like that. I wouldn't want them talking to my mom or my grandmother like that, then report it. It needs to be reported. Fraud can be something as simple as someone documenting ahead of time. So if a CNA is going into the kiosk and documenting that someone was toileted and they haven't been toileted yet, that is considered fraud as well. So all those things have to be reported. Ethics. You're really going to see the ethics piece when it comes to department heads, board of directors, and making sure that we are all doing what we need to do. Some of the things with ethics, and I'll go over into it a little bit more, is making sure that people haven't been committed certain crimes, making sure people haven't been fired for abuse or neglect. Confidentiality, we of course all know about HIPAA. We just talked about HIPAA. But we have confidentiality in the facility as well. Confidentiality, just as a backup, HIPAA is only our residents, okay? So if I share information about Roseanne to someone, it's confidential information, but it is not HIPAA breach. So I get that a lot. Well, you can't do that because it's a HIPAA breach. No, it's not. It's staff members is a confidentiality thing. The other thing with confidentiality is business, day-to-day business operations. So if you know of information, again, mainly directors and stuff know budgeted items and stuff, that maybe things shouldn't be shared with certain people, that is a piece of confidentiality as well. Conflict of interest, again, usually you don't see it with staff. A lot of times with board of directors, we look at confidentiality. It could be a confidentiality, or conflict of interest for one of our board members to be on our board, and then an employee of Menahaven, okay, because they can take information back and forth to the places. So that would probably be a conflict of interest. It's okay for staff members to be employed by different places because all you're doing is providing the care and services to the residents. You probably don't know the information that could be shared back and forth. Business relationships, just making sure that you have good relationships with our contractors. Protection of assets. This is kind of us following, when you hear us harping on overtime or spending money that we shouldn't be spending, that would be the protection of assets. We need to make sure our assets are there to be able to take care of our residents in the future. So when we talk about spending excess money or watching our overtime, this is part of that. Reporting suspected misconduct, again, kind of back to the abuse and neglect thing, report what you're seeing over here. As far as employees, volunteers, and agents, and I have it called vetting here, but basically what this is saying is, what do we do to allow staff to come in? How do we know that they're appropriate to come in? Same with our vendors, doctors, all that. One of them is a criminal clearance. So we have to do Pennsylvania criminal clearances on all employees, volunteers, certain contracted staff. We also have to do an FBI on them if they've lived out of the state in the last 2 years. The third is reference checks. So we do reference checks on individuals, not to find out how many disciplines you've been given or your attendance tardiness, that kind of stuff. Department of Health is specifically looking to make sure that you haven't been terminated for any type of abuse or neglect. And that's what they are looking at for that. And lastly is exclusionary checks. So we have websites that we have to go into. There are 3 websites that I have to go into every time we hire someone and make sure that your name does not pop up on that website. And it's checking to make sure that you haven't been excluded from working in a nursing home. So there's 3 sites I have to do that on. I have to do that for all employees, vendors, employees, doctors, hospice nurses, all that kind of stuff. And not only do I have to do it once, but I have to do it on a monthly basis. Basically, anytime we're receiving federal funding, which we do receive federal funding here, then we have to make sure that no one's on these sites, because if they're on those exclusionary sites, they may have had a conviction dealing with federal funding. So they want to make sure that we're not paying an employee federal money that they were convicted of in the past. Does that make sense to everyone? Okay. Relationship with residents. We obviously want good relationships with our residents, but this is talking more of making sure that we're following residents' rights. Again, Julianne will talk about that. Granting their wishes as far as advanced directives and any health care inquiries. So we do have a compliance committee that meets quarterly, and this is a list of individuals who are on it. Jeff is our administrator, myself, Barb Wall, our CFO, Josh, our IT, Barb Wissinger, Director of Nursing, Karen, our Assistant Director of Nursing, Margaret, our RN Assessment Coordinator, Danielle, the Personal Care Home Administrator, Julianne, our Director of Social Services, and Stacy, our Director of Rehab. So our jobs are to come in, We look at surveys that have occurred, plans of correction, making sure that we're still compliant with all that. We also look at any regulatory changes that could be new laws, new regulations, ensuring that our policies are up to date. And believe me, we've been very active with COVID policies, and I'm sure you guys have seen them are coming in and out all the time. Reporting mechanisms, make sure you know who to report to for things. Always your supervisors, use chain of command, but you can report to directors as well. Retaliation, so the very important thing here. So you need to feel safe reporting someone, whether it's abuse, neglect, frauds, anything like that. You have to feel safe reporting that. You're not going to feel safe if someone's retaliating against you. So if I am reporting Kathy for an abuse or neglect situation, I go to Barb, I talk to Barb, get all the information. Barb goes to Kathy, does the investigation. Well, Kathy knows it was me because I was the only one in the room with her. Barb didn't tell her it was me, but she knew it. So after her meeting's done with Barb, she searches for me, finds me, and sits there and yells at me because I reported her. That is retaliation. Simply questioning someone about why they reported someone can be considered retaliation. If you've reported someone and that person comes up to you later and starts questioning you, are you going to feel uncomfortable? Yes, for the most part. I mean, there may be a handful of people that don't. So anytime that you think you would feel uncomfortable, it's considered retaliation. So we cannot tolerate retaliation. So again, but I can't read minds. I don't know if people are coming to you. You have to report that as well so that we can deal with that. Any questions on compliance? No? All right. You're done listening to me?